The world is extraordinary, and I'm really pretty ordinary, but it's how people view you.
Wilt Chamberlain was one of the most dominant figures the game of basketball has ever seen. A true giant on the court, Wilt shattered records, rewrote history, and became a larger-than-life icon in ways few athletes ever have. But towering talent comes with towering rivalries, and a few just didn't seem to click with Wilt on or off the court. Let's deep dive into 6 basketball players Wilt had strained relationships with, players who in one way or another became sources of outright dislike for the Big Dipper. Bill Russell. No rivalry in basketball history compares to Wilt versus Bill Russell. It wasn't just a battle of skill, but a clash of philosophies and mindsets. Wilt was the stat machine, individual records, jaw-dropping numbers, and an unmatched physical presence. On the other hand, Russell prioritized one thing above all: winning championships. The results? Russell's Celtics repeatedly bested Wilt in critical games, including 7 playoff series victories. Even though Wilt statistically outperformed Russell in nearly every category, Russell walked away with 11 rings while Wilt only had 2. The perceived narrative that Russell was the better player due to his championships irritated Wilt. He felt misunderstood, once saying in an interview, "People measure a player's greatness by rings, but what about everything else? I've averaged over 50 points in a season. How many players can say that?" Despite mutual respect later in life, their rivalry was full of tension. Russell knew how to spark Wilt's emotions, playing mind games during games and always staying composed, while Wilt erupted in frustration. Their battles defined an entire era of basketball. And for Wilt, Russell was less of a friend and more of the ultimate competitor. Kareem AbdulJabbar. Wilt and Kareem's relationship was complicated. Wilt had solidified himself as the most dominant big man when Kareem came into the league, and comparisons between the two immediately began. Kareem's skyhook dominance in the paint and reserved personality contrasted sharply with Wilt's outgoing nature and physicality. Wilt reportedly didn't enjoy the idea of passing the torch to Kareem, and subtle jabs were exchanged off the court. A significant moment came when Wilt once commented on Kareem's playing style during a magazine interview, saying, "I focus on overpowering people, not finesse. It doesn't take finesse to dunk on someone." Kareem, in turn, felt that Wilt was dismissive and protective of his legacy. The tension boiled over in all-star games and interviews where the two made indirect comments about each other's achievements. While there was grudging respect between them, Wilt's reluctance to let a younger star take over created an underlying friction. Later, Kareem called Wilt's dominance a product of his era, subtly diminishing Wilt's greatness, a comment that stung deeply for a player so proud of revolutionizing basketball. Wes Unselled. Though Wilt was practically unstoppable, Wes Unselled represented a rare challenge. Julius Erving even mentioned in his autobiography that Wilt truly feared Unselled's defensive toughness. Wes was shorter but relentless, using his physical strength and smarts to push back against Wilt's overwhelming presence in the paint. For Wilt, this frustration wasn't just about ability, it was about pride. He didn't enjoy being perceived as vulnerable, and Unselled's ability to neutralize him left Wilt annoyed. In interviews, Wilt was often dismissive when Unselled's name was brought up, instead turning focus toward his own achievements. But insiders recall that Wilt fully knew the challenge Unselled presented. The dynamic between them serves as further proof that even legends aren't invincible. "Nobody stops Wilt," Unselled once joked in the locker room, "but I'll give him the toughest time he's ever had." Elgin Baylor. Wilt and Elgin Baylor shared the stage as teammates during their Lakers tenure, but their relationship wasn't always smooth. While Baylor was known for his finesse and offensive brilliance, Wilt took over as the dominant voice in the locker room. Baylor reportedly felt overshadowed by Wilt's larger-than-life presence and leadership style, causing friction between the two. As teammates, Wilt's loud confidence and demand for attention didn't mesh well with Baylor's quieter demeanor. In a podcast interview years later, Lakers role player Keith Erickson remarked how their chemistry wasn't perfect, saying they were competitors even on the same team, both alphas fighting for control. Baylor's frustration became evident during games when Wilt insisted on running plays his way, even bypassing set plays designed for Baylor. Though neither openly criticized the other, the tension was palpable. Baylor might have once said, "Wilt was a giant, not just physically but personality-wise. Sometimes it was hard to find my space in that." Willis Reed. Wilt versus Willis Reed was a battle of pure determination versus unrelenting dominance. Reed was everything Wilt disliked: gritty, tough, and willing to grind out wins, even against more talented opponents. In Game 7 of the 1970 NBA Finals, Reed famously played injured, hitting 2 clutch shots and inspiring the Knicks to victory over Wilt's Lakers. Wilt, who prided himself on physicality and skill, could hardly believe that an injured player had stolen the spotlight from him. During interviews after that series, Wilt brushed off Reed's heroic effort, not out of disrespect, but out of frustration. "That was their night," Wilt said. "I'm not impressed by a player limping around making shots. That's luck." Wilt's disdain for Reed was rooted in moments like these, where grit triumphed over greatness. Reed, however, remained unbothered, later reflecting in interviews on how beating Wilt was his proudest achievement. Hal Greer. Hal Greer and Wilt were teammates during Wilt's time on the Philadelphia 76ers. On paper, it seemed like a match made in heaven, Chamberlain dominating the paint and Greer acting as a consistent scoring threat. But off the court, the two didn't always see eye to eye. Wilt's commanding presence occasionally overshadowed Greer's quieter, more calculated approach to the game, causing tension within the team. Wilt once mentioned in interviews that Greer wasn't enthusiastic enough, a comment that Greer found insulting. Their clash wasn't necessarily public, but teammates noticed the friction during huddles and team meetings. Many believed Wilt's outgoing personality clashed with Greer's more reserved demeanor. Greer himself hinted at the tension when asked about teamwork. Not everyone understands the importance of contribution over dominance. Though they won a championship together, their natural personalities created moments of strain between two legends. In basketball, rivalries, connections, and conflicts are part of the journey. For Wilt, these players represented moments of career-defining tension. Each story highlights not just the competition, but the human element behind the game we love. Thanks for tuning in, and see you on the next one.